Hello and welcome to The Witcher: Facts Behind the Monsters. During last week's video, we had a little bit of an unplanned event occur. While I was talking about one creature found in Italian lore, I realized I could make a video about another topic. This whole chain of events led to today's upload. Now, when it comes to the Witcher universe, there are many strange creatures to be found. While it is a fictional series, some of those creatures do have their roots in alleged real-life counterparts. This can take the shape of both cryptids and pure mythology. Being the author of the books is Polish, I assumed many of the beings would be from Polish lore, but this doesn't seem to be always the case. Before proceeding, I do want to say that The Witcher comes in many forms: books, comic books, video games, and the recent Netflix series. As much as it pains me to admit, I have never gotten around to reading the books, so my knowledge is based on the games and Netflix. For today's video, I want to focus primarily on the creatures found in the TV series. However, if this is well received, then I can certainly see making this a multi-part video based on all of the lore. So grab a flagon of your favorite drink, put your Gwent cards aside, and meditate by the fire as we look at the truth behind the monsters from The Witcher. I understand, when it comes to a video like this, that it is possible a portion of my audience may be unaware of anything dealing with The Witcher. So, I won't go into huge details here, but a few keynotes may be necessary to help you. The Witcher is based in a medieval fantasy realm where all types of beasts roam about, not too dissimilar to tales about knights and dragons. In it is a group of humans who were modified by potions to become monster hunters known as Witchers. The name doesn't mean that they are witches. In fact, they have very little magic ability outside of protection signs, as they call them. They are faster, stronger, live longer, and more perceptive than humans, but most of their powers come from potions and blade oils created from various herbs before battle. The main character, or hero, is named Geralt of Rivia, but we will simply call him Geralt. He has a love interest, in all the media, with a sorceress named Yennefer. She is not a witcher, and isn't really a monster hunter, but outside of the previous information, that's pretty much all you need to know about her for the sake of our video. So with that rudimentary information, you should be up to speed. Now when it comes to this series, there are quite a few creatures that appear to be completely created specifically for The Witcher. However, I will do my best to try to uncover what the basis for the creatures may have been. The only being that doesn't seem to have a real-world counterpart would be the Kralak, also known as roachhounds, which were seen in the first season. While it is fairly cool looking with the metal claws and all, I couldn't find anything that even somewhat resembled this for comparison. While I don't want to focus on them, their lore claims that they are an insect-like creature collectively called Eider, or IDR, which are created using magic and genetic manipulation. They have a segmented gray-colored body that is covered in tiny hairs, which are very sensitive to vibrations and changes in the environment. Typically, they are pack hunters and are said to be very intelligent with the ability to strategize before moving. Not only do they have metal-like attachments to their arms, but their mandibles are razor-sharp as well. It should be noted that the Kralak are a branch of this species, and the standard Eider doesn't have the metal arms. The first creature that was shown in Season 1 was the kikimora, although I don't recall the show actually mentioning the name. It is also found in the video games and books, but the descriptions vary quite a bit between the different media. This version is basically a spider-like insect that is said to make its home in swamps, but is primarily found living underground. They have a system that is set up like bees or ants, where there is a queen, workers, and soldiers, or warriors. From the lore, we can assume that the one in the show is a queen, since the warriors are said to look more like a beetle, and the workers are similar to the queen, but are quite a bit smaller. The queen is very powerful and capable of killing a person in a single blow. They also possess very thick armor like plating on the carapace that is said to be fairly impervious to blades. If that doesn't make them dangerous enough, apparently they produce poisons that can easily overcome any would-be attacker. In the show, the kikimora has very distinct eyes, but in the rest of the universe, they are said to not have any, due to them being useless since the creatures live in the dark. Now, this one is a mixed bag when it comes to real-world counterparts. The kikimora is found in many areas such as Poland, Germany, Russia, and the Balkans. There is an English version, but it is typically just a ghost. Other than in Russia, the being is considered a spirit and in many ways very similar to a succubus. However, in Serbia, it generally is more in line with the German lore about mares, where they will sit on a person's chest while they sleep and try to choke them. This version is said to be able to enter a room via a keyhole in the door. Now, in Russia, we have two different descriptions for the same being, and they feel more akin to the Witcher depiction. The first is said to live in the forest, and is actually the wife of the Russian house spirit known as Domovoy. The other is married to Leshy, and is said to live in the swamps, although she is known to inhabit people's houses. Once inside, it is almost impossible to get her to leave, and she typically hides behind the stove, or, eerily enough, in the basement. In this situation, she can be either good or bad. It will take on the role of a house spirit, and if the house is kept unclean or the occupants are lazy, then bad things will happen. If the home is clean, then she will help to keep it clean, but will eventually move on. It is described as looking like a small hunchback old woman with a long nose and disheveled hair. At times, she is shown possessing a chicken's beak, duck bill, or even a dog's muzzle. There have also been reports of her taking the form of a large goat-like creature with glowing red eyes. This kikimora is said to enjoy frightening people, knocking travelers off their path, and will even kidnap children. The most interesting point is that she has a habit of trying to drown victims in her swamp, which is what we saw the creature in the show try to do. Another interesting point that makes sense for the show is that in 1988, a new species of sheet weaver spider was discovered by Russian biologist Kirill Eskov, and it was given the name Kikimora palustris, in honor of the creature found in folklore. The next creature that was seen in the series, and was the original idea for this video, was the striga. For the show, this creature is a person, typically female, that has been cursed by someone. After the curse takes hold, the person then transforms into a muscular beast that has razor-sharp claws, an extended mouth that stretches from ear to ear, runs on all fours, is extremely powerful and fast, and has an intense hatred for all living beings. Much like old vampire lore, they typically sleep in a crypt and only emerge to feed when there is a full moon. Unlike most beasts in this realm, once the curse is in place, the striga constantly stays in that form, and doesn't revert back to being human unless the spell is broken. I couldn't find direct mentions of it, but apparently silver affects this being. Geralt utilized silver items twice in his fight against the striga. First was a chain, and then silver knuckles. Another thing that was inferred is that sunlight is effective in curing someone from the curse. While the TV version is interesting, and the fight scene was epic, I have to say that it has nothing on the original mythology. The striga is found in the lore of Italy, Greece, Poland, and portions of Germany. They are typically a female demon that is very often linked to the stories behind vampires. The lore is a bit confusing on a few accounts, but from what I can gather, the entity afflicts a human at birth and waits until their death to emerge. While human, they appear as anyone else, but they do have 2 sets of teeth, 2 hearts, and 2 souls. According to some lore, their skin can also have a light blue hue. These beings were greatly feared, and soon other signs were added to that list. If a baby was born with teeth, if someone was known to sleepwalk, or even if there was a lack of body hair, such as under the arms, then they were all considered strigas. When any of these attributes were discovered, the townsfolk pushed the person out of the village. This act was very counterproductive, since this action led to that person dying, and as a result, allowed the demon to emerge. It was said that only one of the souls could pass through the afterlife, while the other would bring the person back to life as a full-fledged striga. At first, they would look fairly normal, but over time would start to develop owl-like features, such as feathered wings, pointy ears, and sharp claws. They would reside within crypts during the day, and at night would fly around and attack unwary travelers. Once they found a victim, they would suck their blood and eat many of their internal organs. Lore states that after turning, many would attempt to survive off of animals, but eventually they would need to feed on humans. It is said that their first human meal is normally the people who pushed them out of the village. There are a couple ways to prevent this creature from turning, and that would be burning the body, decapitation where the body and head are buried separately, placing a sickle around the neck, or putting a piece of flint in the mouth. Those were just a few ways, but there are quite a bit more. In fact, there have been graves found with the skeletons of sickles around the neck or flint in the mouth. The next creature found in Season 1 was called a sylvan, or Torque the Sylvan to be exact. Again, descriptions vary between the media, with the show and book stating the same thing. These creatures are human-like in appearance but have bulging yellow eyes, a slit for a mouth, goat-like horns on their head, thick hair covering their body from the waist down, cloven hooves, and a long tasseled tail. Generally, they are good-natured and can be fairly helpful with maintaining crops. Some do enjoy playing pranks on humans from time to time. Their appearance is often mistaken for them being devils. They can live up to 100 years and are herbivores. They are generally considered defenseless, but some have shown the ability to manipulate people's minds, and others have learned how to breathe fire. While we are focusing on the series, I should mention that the only differences in the games is that they are depicted as greatly overweight and are a little more deadly when fighting. We have another mix when it comes to real-world counterparts. Similar beings can be found in the mythology of Greece with fauns, which include the famous Pan, and Rome had satyrs. Before going into this, the name Sylvan is actually derived from the ruler named Sylvanus. In Roman mythology, he looked very much human, and was the god of drunkenness, the forest, and uncultivated lands. In this role, he protected sheep from wolves and was known to promote fertility. The Greeks also had a similar being known as Silenus. Romans also had a god called Faunus and a goddess named Fauna, who were depicted as goat people. Both fauns and satyrs were said to have a human-looking head, torso, and arms. Their lower half was goat-like with a long tail, and they had horns on their head. Although, originally, satyrs looked more like a mix between dwarves and a horse, but this changed later. So, to be historically accurate, fauns were the first to be depicted as goat people. Much like the lore in The Witcher, these creatures were fairly helpful towards humans, and would often help them when they got lost. It should be noted that satyrs were more interested in seducing human women than fauns were. For the most part, their primary activity was having as good a time as possible. I couldn't find much in the way of a being that had a goat-like face and the rest of the features in mythology. Of course, there are plenty that fit that bill within cryptids, like the Goat Man, but they tend to be less friendly and never seen playing music. Next up, we have the ever-popular djinn. Not much of a backstory was given to this entity, other than apparently someone trapped it in a pot, and once it was released, it immediately attacked the bard named Jasker and swelled his throat. This later was revealed to be the result of a wish from Geralt, where he requested peace and quiet. So with that, the series set the stage that in this universe, a djinn is of the three wishes type of being. Of course, the show utilized the djinn for a bit more, with at one point even appearing to try to kill Yennefer. In the lore for the series, this particular being was an air elemental, but there are others that are based in water, fire, and earth. However, these last three are oddly enough called genies rather than djinn. It is possible to capture one of them, and if done, they are required to grant 3 wishes before they can be free again. In this universe, they are seen as very powerful and dangerous. This entry will be a little less informative than the others, since the lore is fairly similar. They are written about in many cultures' texts, such as in Morocco, Albania, and Turkey. Of course, the most prominent writings are found in the Islamic, Muslim, and to a minor degree Jewish religions. They are a race of being that were said to be created from a smokeless fire. In the creation stories, many state that they were actually made before humans roamed the earth. There are discrepancies in the lore, but most all agree that in their natural form, they are invisible to the eye, but they can take on a human or animal form, which can be seen, if they choose to. The name djinn pretty much means to conceal or hidden from human eyes. While they are typically feared, they are said to be like humans in that they need to eat, normally rotten food or bones, will procreate, and can with humans, and they can die. They live in various planes of existence, including ours. Generally, they are viewed as neutral beings where they are neither good nor bad, but some do draw that line. There is a debate as to how powerful they are, with some saying they are capable of many things, while others say they are weaker than humans. Here's where another debate comes in. Does a djinn have the power to harm a human like the show depicts? Some say no, while majorities say that they can cause all forms of illness, misfortune, and even death. Going a step farther, there are many who feel the djinn can actually possess a person, much like most cultures feel demons can. Now, something I couldn't pin down is if they can be captured or not. Again, we have opposing views on that as well. Now, a mistake the show made was that they separated the words djinn and genie. In none of the cultures is the word genie used. Another thing is that it is never mentioned that whether captured or not, that they'll grant any number of wishes. From what I could gather, the closest you come to this is that the djinn will try to talk people into things. Interestingly, the idea of a djinn being related to elements is sort of close. While I can't reliably find if they actually are from the 4 elements, there are writings of them being linked to wind. Frequently, sandstorms are said to be djinn or caused by them. In other writings, they can appear as a shadow to specific notable people. Djinn are treated with caution, but are not hated, although prayers are common to protect oneself from one wishing to cause them harm. At this point, I can see I'm around the duration I keep my videos at. We aren't even halfway through, but I need to get this out to you. There is certainly enough left for 3 more videos just based on the Netflix series alone. I really enjoyed making this video, and I hope you found it interesting as well. I will leave the fate of this series up to you. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more, or are you just wanting topics revolving around our normal subject matter. Regardless of what you decide, I will see you next week where we are continuing our Cryptid by State series with a visit to Idaho, which just barely beat out Hawaii. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.